What up? Watching another episode of Dallas Ebonics where we talk black. And so, before we get started, I really want y'all to go check out this book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGroat. It's a good book, and it's part of the reason why I'm making this video now. So check it out. The title of today's lesson is White Fragility and How Slavery Has Affected the White Race. I'm going to have 3 points. Point number 1, why is it important to understand white trauma? Point number 2, white fragility and privilege. Point number 3, lynchings and black murder. Point number 1, why is it important to understand white trauma? We speak and they can't hear us. I see a lot of us doing a lot of arguing online, going back and forth with white folks. On the street, going back and forth with white folks. We say Black Lives Matter, they say All Lives Matter. And for a long time, I thought it was just outright apathy for our situation, which it may be for some, but now I'm starting to think that there's a psychological disconnect, you know what I'm saying, that's preventing them from empathizing with us. You know, we say stop over policing our kids and shooting our kids in the street. They say, oh, well, don't break the law, won't be no issue. Hey, bruh, they can't even hear us. It's as if we going right over their head, bro. They can't hear us. And so we still dealing with the same issue. But our opposition is beginning to spread to other races. On top of the trauma white folks already face, the powers that be have been strategically using the media to convince the world that we deserve the treatment that we are getting. It's important for us to understand how the effects of that white trauma is being spread to other races. I see not just white folks opposing us. I'm starting to see other races, even Mexicans. Even some of the Mexicans are, not only do they have disdain for our situation, but also for our reaction to the situation. And when we try to bring this up and maybe come to some kind of common ground, there's a disconnect, you know what I'm saying? Which brings me to point number 2, white fragility and privilege. Robin DiAngelo coined the phrase white fragility in 2018. She defines it as the defensiveness and argumentation that often erupts whenever white people are challenged on their racial views. I would even go so far as to say that white fragility isn't just, you know, for white people. I feel like a lot of other races have a certain level of white fragility because of a defensiveness that they have as it pertains to black people. Even though a lot of them had nothing to do with our enslavement in the first place. But there's still a defensiveness when you bring up race around them. I don't really know why that is. But I believe this is stemmed from an internal guilt that many of them feel, and they exhibit white fragility as a defense mechanism. Maybe unintentionally, you know, which brings me back to the psychological concept. If it is unintentional, you know what I'm saying? So if it is, there's something in their brains that's preventing them from empathizing with us. What is it that makes it difficult for you to understand what's going on with us and why we feel the way that we feel? And if it is intentional, it may not necessarily mean that they can't empathize with us, but are complacent and disinclined to subvert the power and dominance that their people maintain, which they benefit from. You know, and a lot of people like to say that white privilege is a myth, but I strongly disagree with that. While all white people don't benefit from white supremacy, all white people have the ability to benefit from white supremacy if they so choose to. And I can understand why a white person wouldn't understand their white privilege because they're not black. Black people have been stripped of some of those privileges that white people have. And they don't understand that because they're white. They're not black. So they don't understand the privilege that they have. So I'm going to educate you today. The first challenge of most blacks is just surviving the ghetto. And by surviving, I mean alive with no felonies and minimal psychological trauma. By the time I was 17, 3 of my friends had already been murdered at 17. And this is the story of most of us. You know what I'm saying? If you decide to stay in the ghetto, this is one of your challenges. Just surviving. If you decide to leave, your second challenge is going to be tolerating the racism that will follow. Because it will follow. Many white folks are able to live their lives and be successful and hardly see any people of other races. Blacks have no choice but to embrace multiculturalism because once we leave the ghetto, there's not really many places to just find regular blacks being black in peace. You don't really find that outside of the hood. Or at least I don't. And this inability to be black without being ostracized, you know what I'm saying, causes many of us to either tuck our blackness in or rebel and be viewed as a walking, talking stereotype. And this is something that I dealt with when I was in school, because just me being myself and being who I am, I dealt with so much racism that it made me feel like, well, if they gonna call me a gangster anyway, if they gonna look at me like a dope boy anyway, I might as well just do what I want. I might as well smoke all the weed I want. I might as well sell the dope. Either way, that's how they gonna look at me. And that's a trap. You know what I'm saying? They convince you that you might as well be exactly what they think you are. Because either way, they gonna think that about you. You know what I mean? And so, that's an issue. You know, that's an issue. The third challenge will be finding a job that won't hire you just because you're black in the name of diversity, and that won't fire you for appearing too black. The challenge of being black is knowing when and where to tuck your blackness in. See, these are challenges that white folks know nothing about. White folks never have to tuck their whiteness in. White folks never have to worry about getting hired at a job or getting fired at a job because they're white. These are challenges that we deal with. So when we talk about white privilege, this is what we mean. It's not just that y'all have more opportunities than us. It's that you are allowed to be white in peace wherever you want. We don't get that. We don't get that. Point number 3, lynchings and black murder. Between 1882 and 1968, there were 4,743 recorded lynchings of black people. Many of us believe our neighborhoods are in shambles because of slavery, but that's a lie. Although it affected us, slavery did not harm us in that way. It was the over 100 years of terror that followed, which included the destruction of many of our cities, along with the deindustrialization of the inner city and the introduction of crack cocaine. When I was at Spruce High School in Pleasant Grove, I read a yearbook, and in the yearbook it had like all the different, pictures of all the graduates or whatever, right? And it showed back in the 60s and the 70s, it was nothing but white people. Nothing but white people. And I asked one of the teachers or whatever, I was like, why it ain't nothing but white people in here? And I guess he didn't know because he didn't give me an answer. But once integration and all of that popped off, white folks and all of the resources that they had left. And they left us down here with nothing. You know what I'm saying? And so this is the situation that we have. You know what I mean? They left and took the resources with them and then brought us cocaine and then gave us 3 strikes and you out by Joe Biden. This is what they did. You know what I'm saying? And this is a large reason why our neighborhoods are the way that they are. Because of the war on drugs, the deindustrialization of our cities, and the lack of resources that they left us with. But we talking about lynchings. A man in Omaha, Nebraska, a man named Will Brown in 1919, during the Red Summer, was lynched, and it was witnessed by about 20,000 people. Witnessed by about 20,000 people. Look, I got the picture. Hold on. I got the picture of it. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. But don't just look at him. Look at who's in the picture. I know it's blurry. Look at who's in the picture. All of those white folk. They in there smiling. In the picture, they are smiling. They're happy to be there. They want to be there. It said they cut the man's body up and pieces of the rope and his body was sold for money. They even hung the mayor of the city for attempting to stop them. But he survived. But let me read you something else. Let me read you something else about a man named Sam Jose. On April 2nd in 1899, approximately 2,000 white men, women, and children participated as both witnesses and active agents in the murder of Sam Jose. Just listen to this, bro. Before the torch was applied, the Negro was deprived of his ears, fingers, and genital parts of his body. He pleaded pitifully for his life while the mutilation was going on, but stood the ordeal of fire with surprising fortitude. Before the body was cool, it was cut in pieces. The bones were crushed into small bits, and the tree upon which the wrench met his fate was torn up and disposed of as souvenirs. The Negro's heart was cut into several pieces, as was also his liver. Those unable to obtain ghastly relics paid their more fortunate possessors extravagant sums for them. Small pieces of bones went for 25 cents, and a bit of liver, crisply cooked, sold for 10 cents. Look at that. Look at that. Look who's in the picture. Look who's in it. Children laughing, smiling. Look at that. Look at that. Children. Look at that. This right here is what's wrong with white folks. This right here is what's wrong with them. At such a young age, they have already been conditioned to believe that they are superior. These kids are damaged forever. And they pass down that damage forever. So, let's keep going. Black murder is normal to them. A man by the name of Michael Smith did a TED Talk called Black Murder is Normal, where he states, I asked those advertisers, I got hundreds of songs a day that celebrate killing animals. Will you put them on your show? They said no. I got hundreds of songs a day that celebrate assaulting women and abusing kids. Will you put them on your show? They said no. I got hundreds of songs a day that celebrate killing, murdering blacks. Will you put them on your show? They said it depends. It depends on what? Who it's done by and who it's branded for. This is what they think. You know what I'm saying? And so he goes on to say how hypocritical it is when Rick Ross talked about date rape and got hundreds of thousands of petitions in 24 hours. And Reebok fired him instantly. Instantly. And so I just don't understand. It was okay for Rick Ross to talk about killing black people and selling dope on the corner. There's nothing wrong with that. But as soon as you start talking about different sensitivities, all of a sudden it's an issue. You know, when those sensitivities affect a different demographic, all of a sudden it's an issue. This brings up the conversation of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, because everybody been talking about that. About how their music video is so inappropriate, the music is so inappropriate, but yet there is no national outcry about black murder. There's no national outcry over the glorification of black murder because society has become complacent and conditioned to just accept black murder as normal. To me, this is a reflection of the apathy that they have, you know what I'm saying? Because of all the things that have happened to white folks, the trauma, you know, of them being taught that they are superior to us, them bringing their children to watch us be burned and cut in pieces. Their children saw this. And then you look at the news. Bro, they play the murder of George Floyd on social media over and over and over and over. Why? Everybody done either seen the video or had an opportunity to see the video at this point. They play this over and over because they're trying to perpetuate the situation. They do it because they want to perpetuate our inferiority. And also because we as a people have become complacent and have just accepted that black murder is normal. This is our situation. And so in conclusion, I say we just got to stop trying to convince white people to respect us. We got to stop trying to convince them to hear us and understand us. They have been psychologically damaged and they are unable to hear us because of all of the things they went through, because of the constant portrayal of black murder on TV, black murder in music, black murder in movies, black murder everywhere. Black murder is everywhere. And that has prevented them from being able to empathize with us. Prevented some of them from being able to empathize with us. We should be putting that same energy we spend on trying to convince white people to respect us. We should be putting that same energy on empowering ourselves. And that's where I'm at with it. We should be empowering ourselves. Not trying to convince white people to love us. So, that's my 2 cents.